Cage used the I Ching as the guide. John Cage believed in the concept of never-ending sound. He consulted the I Ching, which is ancient Chinese tech. Cage believed in unity, a very special topic. The concept of unity is within us, how it's very repetitive. Unity is the opposite of chaos. Chaos and unity cannot exist without one another. Cage hated his parents. He referred to his mother as a religious nut. Cage was inspired by two things: Suzuki and Greek mythology, rather Greek architecture. He spent a year in Europe studying the Greek concept of the buildings. He also was inspired by Azuki, who believed that for every chaos there has to be order. Cage sought out to find this idea of order and chaos within each other. He believed that there could be a mathematical solution to this. Cage was a very studious man, and so was Suzuki. Suzuki was his first aspiration, as Cage was very into him. Cage realized he could not devote his entire life to architecture in Greece, and so he left, feeling very frustrated with the knowledge of having to devote his life to art. Cage's inexperience with the Greek architecture showed that he was very thoughtful and very thought-provoking. Cage wanted more out of this, though. Cage realized that the college wasn't being run correctly. Cage remarked that there was no original thinking. Cage feared conformity, saying he wasn't afraid of new ideas, just old ones. People have a tendency to not step out of their comfort zone. Not only did John apply life experiences to outside of college, but he failed to learn that the only reason people hate avant-garde art was out of fear. They didn't understand it, so they feared it. Artists who fear learning new concepts hate it. The only reason conformity exists is out of a fear of individuality. In other words, being an outsider is an unattractive trait. Cage was criticized in Waterwalk for being too absurd. In this day of age, things haven't changed a bit. Cage's work being criticized was the result of the failure to fit in with the status quo. John's status of being an outsider and being homosexual earned him scorn. Yoko would also face scorn for similar reasons. 21st century isn't much different with the exception of the internet at our fingertips. There's somewhat of a fragility towards John Cage's final etching in 1992. Cage did not start etches until somewhere in the late 70s. Cage's work started to shift from dark grays and shattered lines into something much more peaceful. already centered. Cage's work reflected a love that simply could not be replaced. His work reflects a man slowly withering into decay, almost reflecting inner peace with himself. Cage used different shapes as a way of expressing his gentle nature brought on by decades of Zen training. Cage was a Zen Buddhist. Cage successfully came to terms with his own ego, not a brash artist to begin with. Cage's Zen training is reflected in his paintings. The gentle colors show us how Cage loved his work. Cage had a passion like no other. The key word being love. The reason Cage lived a fulfilling life is because his love was a driving force. Cage knew how to love and used that love in his work. Cage's inability to conform was something that he treasured deeply. He was a very nonconformist. He was the grandfather of the avant-garde movement, a movement which translates to new art. Cage was his inability to follow the rules. He didn't follow the rules, which made him unique. I think that Cage was a very experimental man. He inspired a lot of artists, including Thom Yorke and, of course, Yoko Ono. Ono was a great collaborator. Yoko was a screamer, and John loved the unique. He was the eccentric know-it-all that I would definitely have identified with. I think John was a very eccentric artist, and a lot of people don't understand the unique, and they think that it's very dangerous for someone to be very oriented and very challenging. People who fear the unknown are oftentimes cowards. Artists can be cowards, and I think people who don't follow the rules are very brave indeed. I think that people should learn to understand that we are not aren't very scary, we're very unique. I think that John Cage is the forefather of avant-garde, the new normal, I think. I think John Cage liked to frighten people, and that's why they criticized him. He was a very scary artist, and people who don't like strange things are often afraid of them. And I think that's why people don't like art as much. They think it's pretentious, off-putting, very angry, but a lot of it is just a form of self-expression, and John Cage had a certain love to it. He loved working very hard, and he loved to push normals. He liked to push things that weren't very standard. He pushed standards, and he was very understanding of the fact he could push standards to a limit. And what made John Cage so unique was that the way he pushed standards was very off-putting, and that's what I liked about him. I liked John Cage because he was very strange, and I think that he challenged new norms, and that's why people were afraid of him. People were afraid of the fact that he was so creative, and the artists who fear that are cowards. People who fear art are cowards. They're afraid of what could be new, and they're afraid of this new possibility. And Cage went out and like an astronaut and explored the unknown. He was this very